Thanks for joining us on another episode of When Fear Reigns. This is our version that we're calling From Where You Sit. It's a new segment where I get to sit down with people who are living in different stations, different scenarios, different stages of life, different jobs, and kind of give us a glimpse into where they're at and what they're thinking, and really pursuing that tagline that we have at When Fear Reigns of living your faith in the secular world. I'm sitting here with Chad and Cindy White. They have been huge influences on me over the years. I actually got to work with them while I was in Austin, Texas, doing my internship. They're active in their church and their ministry and their family, doing a ton of stuff with teens and families. And I'm just really glad that they're willing to talk today on a little bit more of a serious issue. This is something that Chad and Cindy have had on their hearts for a while, as their kids are now kind of transitioning, right? You've got 3 kids, and some are out of the house, some are still in the house. And so just kind of talking through that transition into empty nester and everything that goes along with it. Thanks, guys, for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Cindy, I want to start with you. You guys are in the middle of this family transition. Can you just walk through your kids, where they're at, what they're doing, who you've got in the house now? I mean, on weekends, are you still doing a ton of laundry, or does that look differently for you guys?
Laundry looks a lot different, but we have 3 kids. Emma is 22 and a senior. She goes to UNT in North Texas studying mathematics. She hopes to be a secondary mathematics teacher and a basketball coach. You'll like that. Heavily involved in tons of stuff at her school, and she is taking over our post-high school ministry with some friends. So she's doing really well. She's currently home right now with the break. And then Bryant is 20, and he is a sophomore at LeTourneau University studying commercial flight. Talk about nerves. Last night in the dark, and that was a little hard on Mama. But he's doing really well. He goes to the church up in Tyler, and his roommate's his best friend Joseph from school, from his Holy Word days. So he's doing really well. And then we have Danny, who is at home. She's a junior. She goes to Round Rock Christian Academy, and hopefully she'll be playing basketball this fall. She's into archery. And just
learning how to drive.
Yes, and so
I just started that.
And we have 2 part-time kids in the house. I've been a nanny to my little cousins, Davis for 13 years and Allie for 10. So during the week, they're here with me doing virtual school, which has been a blessing, just to have a little more commotion in the house.
Yeah, it's never been quiet at your house, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Chad, I wanted to ask you about that, because you guys haven't raised just 3 kids. You haven't had just 2 nanny kids in the house. You've really raised dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of teens with your teen ministry. Can you just talk through how, I mean, both of you guys have worked a lot with teens, and now kind of post high school, that 18 to 22 year range. How has that shaped your parenting over the years?
So I guess, first of all, when we started teen ministry back in like 2002, it's hard to believe 18 years, but you're just thinking, let's just do this teen ministry. How do we do it? How do we do it well? How do we connect with the teens? And you're not really thinking that maybe God's also using this to prepare you for your own kids, parenting your own kids and then watching them transition off into adulthood. So I guess, first of all, just what a gift, looking at it now, what a gift of grace that God gave us that to work with those teens. So I guess just a couple of things I would say is it kind of really put in the forefront that their leaving home was coming. When you're working with teens and, you see them come in as freshmen, and the 4 years that they're there goes by really quick, and you're sad to see them go and go on. And you realize, okay, that's coming for our kids too. And so, one thing it taught me is one to just really, really cherish the time that we have with our kids growing up. And of course you learn we learned some things as you asked about parenting teens and helping them get through those years and helping them get ready to leave the home. And, you know, maybe some of this we'll get into later, but just like one thing I'll say is that time of life is so, there's so much that's going on for them, and there's uncertainty about the future, right? They're getting ready to leave home, and what do I want to do for the rest of my life, and relationships and potential marriage and all that. And it's just a lot. And then we have a lot of expectations for them with school and jobs and sports and making sure they're involved in so many different things, and, you know, get this on your college resume and and we just saw how that can really wear on teens. And not that we did it perfectly, but I think Cindy and I both said, you know, more than anything that they need at that time of life is just, and we didn't do it perfectly. We just say we are not the experts at this at all, but they really need grace. They just, more than anything, they need to know God loves you and we love you. And that more than anything was the big thing. And we try to do that with the teens that we have in youth group, and we tried to do as best we could and still do with our own kids. So
Cindy, you had talked about that a little bit. You know, with Bryant flying and it going to be a lot of pressure on you, or you kind of feeling that. It's a lot of pressure on kids to have the volunteer hours to be in this club and that team and but it's a lot of pressure on parents too, and they feel a lot of stress because it almost feels like if I don't get my kid into this club, or they're not doing this activity, or they're not driving by this time, then they're not going to get into the school that they want, or they're not going to get the career. Can you just talk about how you kind of managed the pressure that you felt as a parent, and then as you, like I've said, you've dealt with a lot of teen parents, the pressure you've seen that they feel, and how to kind of walk through that as a parent of kids who are both in high school and then as they move on into kind of self-sufficiency in adulthood.
Right. I'll probably answer this different than maybe a lot of people, but one, the pressure with Bryant doing a civilian route for flight, and Chad and I kind of swap with who does what for the kids in college, because it's a lot. And so I kind of handle Bryant's stuff. It is a lot. Making sure you have all the government regulations, and you have to stay on top of it. And Bryant and I do it together. So there was some pressure in my doing what I need to do for him, and what he needs me to do, or he's going to fail. But I always told our kids, do what you want to do. Emma, she is more, puts expectations, wants to do more of the stuff than maybe Bryant does or Danny does. And as long as that's their choice, but from doing all the years of youth ministry, two things that I learned outside of what Chad said for Grace is play with your kids and shut your mouth and listen, because they want to talk. And I cannot tell you how many times I heard, I don't care if my mom or dad tells me no, I just want them to listen to what I have to say. And that always stuck with me. And I thought, I don't want my kids to go off thinking, I could never tell my mom and dad what I wanted. Even if they came and told me, no, we're not going to do that. I just wanted them to listen. So that really kind of changed my perspective early on. And that's why I think youth ministry has been such a gift to us, because those kids will be raw with you. And you take it with a grain of salt, because when you're a teenager, you're running on high emotion and feelings, and they're not always correct, but you hear their heart aches.
Yeah.
I think also, yes, there's these things you want to do, and we do that with our kids, right? Like you said, there's a lot of things to get done to get, to get your kids ready for college or whatever they're doing post high school. But also at the end of the day, you do the best you can, and God's got this. He's in control. He's on the throne. Our daughter, Emma, switched majors, when it's a challenge to, on ministry type salaries to help where you can pay for college, you're like, there's a part of you that's like, okay, but also, but this is her deal, right? And she wants to, and she was passionate about it, and we kind of
support her.
We support her, and we said, hey, even this, you're not locking yourself into something, you go for this. Yes, be aware of it, be mindful of it, make good decisions, but who knows where you're going to be 10 years from now, right? I mean, I got an engineering degree and here I am doing ministry.
You can change your mind, and I'm still trying to figure it out.
So
I don't think they need to figure it out right away.
Yeah, and relax in the peace that God's got it. Right, He's got you. He's got control of your life. So,
and I think that's where, the parents that I've interacted with, there are two kind of complaints, and I think you guys have both talked about it. Like, my teenager doesn't listen to me anymore. And I think a big part of that, right, is you're not listening to them. They have their own thoughts, their own ideas. They're really coming into their own, and they're trying to experiment with how they see the world and their perception and how they move through it. I think that advice is good, Cindy. Listen, ask questions, and just give them the room to explore. They may not be right, and you may know that, but they need to figure that out. And so I think that's
really on their own.
They are, and soon, right? Like you said, those 4 years go in a flash. That sophomore sitting at your dinner table is pretty soon going to be on their own, right? And if you continue to protect them, or you continue to try to force them to think a certain way or act a certain way, that can be damaging to them and hurtful to them, because they haven't kind of experimented in a safe place with that.
You remember Annie Drake?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. So she told us, I think she wrote it in her book about parenting teenagers, and I'll always remember it. She said, "Your teens just have the perspective that their lives are in a construction zone." And so, right, it's not going to always look pretty. There's going to be construction undergoing. There's going to be stuff here and there, but it's a work in progress. And I tried to always think of it that way with our kids. Like, it's a construction zone, it's under construction, work in progress, and just try to help them through it.
Yeah, and Chad, you talked about that. I mean, grace really means allowing failure, allowing change, allowing flexibility. That's really what grace at the end of the day means, I think, especially when you apply it to your kids. And maybe they try out for a sport and they don't make it. You got to give them that grace. Maybe your kid doesn't know left from right, and doesn't have any coordination to begin with, and they try out for the baseball team. You gotta let them do it. Be gracious, and then if they fall, if they mess up, not say, "Oh, I told you so. You never should have."
You say, "I'm still proud of you for being you."
Yeah, I'm proud of you for trying. Proud of you for going out for it. Proud of being uncomfortable and doing something strange. I try to build in with my son the conversations. Praise the things that I actually want. So I praise his grit. I honor his attempts. I honor his bravery at doing something that scares him. Those are the things that we as parents, at the end of the day, I don't care if he's a great football player, right? I care that he's going to work hard, and that he's going to fulfill his responsibilities and live with honor and point people to his Savior. Those are the things I really want out of him. And so praise those things. And when he messes up, yep, that's a mess up. Zeke, you shouldn't have, at 4, he's 4, so we're at the other end of the spectrum. Probably shouldn't have pushed the kid on the playground like that.
Mess ups give you a great opportunity to lead.
Go ahead, Cindy.
I was going to say, mess ups give you a great opportunity, whether you're young or whether you're our age, to leak Jesus. Because when you mess up, and we're all a little cracked, how we respond to our mess up leaks Jesus to other people.
And that they know, no matter what, that God loves them and we love them. That'll never change. That's unconditional.
Yeah, that's really, I like that. It leaks Jesus. Mistakes leak Jesus. I like that. Cindy, can you talk about, because coming into this phase of life, I'm sure you guys had some expectations. Maybe you had even talked about it a little bit, and then reality is always very different from expectations. How did you guys manage that in your marriage? Talking about what that was going to look like, now you're in the midst of it, and maybe there are things that have surprised you, curveballs. How do you negotiate those? Because you're a team together. Just talk that through a little bit.
There's a lot in this question, and I tried not to think about it too much, or it wouldn't be natural. But I'm going to speak for a lot of women I know, you kind of don't think about it. until it's like in your face and you're blindsided and you're like, what just happened? Because like we talked earlier before we recorded, people don't really talk about it. And I think we don't talk about how we're feeling, because in the midst of it, we hide emotions. People are not good about sharing emotions, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
You've got these little people that you love, and all of a sudden they're gone. And they come back. I'm sorry, but I'm a full-time mom, and my jobs that I'm paid for allow me to work here in my home. So they leave, and it's like, I tell Chad, it's like you're getting laid off a little bit. So I probably had expectations that Chad and I should feel the same, and not that he didn't feel sad, but we have different ways of handling stuff, and that's okay. Your spouse seems a little more put together, or has grasped reality a little quicker than you do. That's okay. And I think the Lord has blessed us, especially me, with some amazing girlfriends that I can do this and I can cry and they hold your hand, because you just want to talk it out, because there's no fixing it. It's not a different chapter in life. It's a different season. And so, or it's, you can mourn the season that you're living. I mourn when fall is over because I love fall, and that's okay. And it's okay to say you're sad, but you accept where you are, and you know that it's a lot of beautiful stuff. But that's why this was passion. I think people need to talk about it. It is really hard, and you talk about it as spouses, and you have to figure out, you think, well, another expectation, I'm going to have all this free time. That is a lie. And I'm going to tell you right now, Mary Patterson told me that. She says, I'm going to tell you something. Your kids leave and you think you're going to have all this extra time, and you're going to be as busy as you always were.
Guys,
and when they come home, they're
going golfing, or just driving around in the DeLorean, whatever.
And they come home after being away at school for a year, and they're a lot more grown up, and they're going to it's not going to be the same. It's going to be a different kind of fun. But so the whole think you're going to have this free time, Ben, it's not happening. But I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It gives you opportunities to do different things. So I think that an expectation was not thinking it was going to be as hard as it was, and maybe an expectation that Chad and I were always going to feel the same about it. And then an expectation I was going to have all this extra time. And I'm sure there's a ton more of them. They're just.
And by the way, there is, with all that being said, there is some free time that, because we do have some of that even now that we weren't, expecting, or we just, it kind of happens like it never used to. When you have 3 kids in the house and one kid has something going on, you still got the other 2 kids. Well, now, like Danny, with just Danny home, Danny's like, hey, I got a friend coming over. Is that okay? Yeah, good. And then all of a sudden, Cindy and I look at each other like, hey, we got a free evening. What can we do?
What are you going to do? And I'm always like, chores.
and that is a neat little surprise. Sometimes we just say, hey, let's go grab something to eat. Or sometimes we're like, hey, let's just go walk around the living spaces store. We kind of need a new couch. Let's just go look around it, whatever. And then those are some neat surprises. We've enjoyed some neat time together. So
yeah.
But
and I found a lot of peace. I'm not a journaler, and I've heard that a lot of people journal when they get through this. I'm a runner, and I like to pray when I run. I figure if I'm spending that time doing that for my body, I need to do that for my soul. So I do them together. And there's probably many people have driven by thinking, why is that woman crying when she's running? But that's how I released everything. And that was really helpful to me. I could just kind of talk it through with God and kind of cry about it. And he'd walk me through it and say, you got this, you can do hard things.
And I think it has taught us, to some degree, that we kind of let our guard down a little bit more. It's a little easier to, because we had the moments that you hear people talk about where we're getting ready to move Emma out of the house, and the room was empty. We're packed, the car's packed. We're leaving to take her to college, and Cindy and I we're getting ready to head out the door. We looked in that back bedroom, and we both just looked at each other, and we lost it. Like, we're leaving. Here we go, And then we got home later that weekend, and we got back in bed, and we cried for probably a half hour, just hugged each other. And, and I guess I would say that to people that are listening is
it's okay.
It's okay, and it happens. And it's, and in fact, in ways it's good, and it's healing to share that with each other. And, and just know it, like Cindy said, it's hard. And then if you love your kids, and I know you all do out there, right? Not saying that, but, and you like spending time with them, and we do. Our family likes spending time together. It was hard, but you get through it. And everybody told us that. We said with time and prayer, and staying close to Jesus, you'll get through it. You'll get through this season of life.
You better believe we gutted that bedroom as soon as we came home. Now, mind you, our oldest knew we were going to do this. And it's what you see back there. It's the biggest bedroom in the house because we built it in our garage. So our youngest daughter moved in it. We let her paint it, change it, because we didn't want to call it Emma's room. And we made Emma's room upstairs. So when we walk into the kitchen, we weren't looking at this empty room. And so I think that helped her, our youngest, with the transition, because it's hard on your whole family, not just you, your whole family. That
was another thing, maybe that a reality that we weren't necessarily expecting is how much it hit our kids. We were just thinking, hey, this is going to be hard for us, but it's hard for your kids too. And that older kid leaves, and they were used to doing stuff with them, and so they're going through their own set of emotions, their own changes, their own, along with their own future ahead, and they're leaving home too. So it's a lot. It's a lot to go through.
So Chad, as you think back on that, that moment when you saw that empty room, was there anything you could have done to prepare for that? Or is that just kind of one of those things that you just grit your teeth and you go through it? Grief is the price tag of love. And that's just part of the deal.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there are some things you can do to help prepare. And I guess, you had asked us at another time, what advice would we give to couples? I mean, we have a couples group that we're a part of, and it's been huge for us. And I think if you can get some type of a small group, or even just a group of friends that are going through the same thing you are, that can definitely help prepare you, because you can talk about it, you can laugh about it, cry about it, share things together, have devotional time together.
Group, would you say us deciding to do that group would be a blessing of all this? Because I don't know if we would have thought to do we call it marriage in the middle. Everyone has at least one kid in college, and you have to be married 20 plus years. So we're all in it together.
Right. And we had, like, Pastor Don Patterson, our senior pastor here, and some of our friends would share with us things that kind of help prepare us. But on the other hand, no, I mean, there were things that, like we said earlier, that I was not expecting, days where it would hit me emotionally, that just kind of out of the blue, it's like, it's a grieving process. So in some ways, like every other thing that you grieve, you couldn't prepare for it. So yeah.
I don't grieve the laundry. It's a lot less, a lot, until they come home to visit. And I thought that they would do their laundry at school and just come home, but they bring it with them.
Yeah. I was going to say, if Brian's anything like I was, I'm like, here, Mom, here's my clothes from the 6 months. Would you?
You know what? You appreciate it. Like at the time when you're in the midst of all the laundry, all those years, they leave and you're like, and then they come back. I think the first time they were all back, I took a picture of down the hallway. We had all the laundry lined up. And before I would have looked at that like a burden, but I looked at it like, oh, cool. You got your kids home under one roof, and they still need me. They're letting me think.
As an adult child, I'm telling you, you always need your parents. That's something else you guys have talked about. This transition, this time of life comes with other things too. It's not just your kids leaving, but you're feeling, married 20 plus years, you guys have been through a lot together. Physically, you're at a different stage than you were 20 years ago.
I don't know about that. No, I'm just kidding.
But your parents, your parents are starting to, that's kind of an age where people start to see their parents move back in with them, or there's a higher demand for care for parents.
Right.
There's a lot that happens in that kind of empty nesting transition, isn't there?
Yes. And you bringing that up, I was just talking with a friend last night about this. Talk about it. When your parents are healthy, Chad and I are blessed. We have both of our parents. Chad's parents live in Texas, mine in Virginia. Talk about it among yourselves. What would we do if our parents need us? And talk to your parents about it. And
what are their expectations? What are they thinking about all that?
And don't wait. Make them open conversations. And they're a little hard, but if you just talk about it, then you're not slammed. And I would say parents, when you have kids that are younger, especially when they're your age, it's hard to think, oh, he might be going away for college or moving out on his own or whatever it is your child's doing. Talk about it when they're little, because it's easy. You're not as emotional about it. Don't wait until the end of their senior year to sit down with your spouse and talk about whatever. Just start talking about it now.
And just knowing that that is a part of the transition, that there are these other things that are going on that make it, that add challenges to it. Like you said, your health changing. I mean, you're about at that age when you're in your 40s and 50s. And my parents always talked about it. Oh, you're going to have this happen and this happen. Oh yeah. Well, then it does. And you start experiencing it, and just knowing that that's going to be a part of your life then, and that you're going to need each other. And like Cindy said, talk about it earlier on. Have a support group, have friends that you can talk to. Frankly, I wouldn't even mind seeing, like the Wells, our church body, or some churches, doing a little bit more intentionally for people that are going to go through that. Whether it be small group ministry or maybe some devotionals that are out there, some Bible studies.
Maybe you could do a podcast on that. I had something I want to jump back real quick. Chad and I, our two oldest kids are in college, but there is a lot of young men and women that college is not the route for them. They're going to do trade school or something else.
Military.
I think that's fantastic. And something we have learned throughout the years, when kids decide that college is not the route they want to go, they have a hard time telling their moms and dads that, because our society pushes college. And
it's kind of the expectation.
If you have a child that's going to do something different, and maybe they're going to live at home for a couple more years, that's okay. That's your season you're in, and that's okay. Embrace that, because it's really hard for a young person to come and announce something that they feel, whether true or not, they feel that mom and dad didn't plan that for them. So give some grace there.
And they're going to let their parents down, or you're going to disappoint them or whatever. Because we've had some fantastic kids come through, and they're going on to trade schools and becoming auto mechanics and electricians. And actually, I mean, just to say it honestly, they're doing pretty well, and they
Job
don't have
security.
4 years of college debt,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think about those kinds of kids, or military kids that go off and they're going to enlist, and to be proud of that too. Your kid is not your and I have to work on this with my 4-year-old, right? That he doesn't become the embodiment of what I wish I had done when I was a kid, or what I loved when I was a kid. He's a different person. He's got different gifts, different skills, different passions, different personality, different character traits. The Lord has blessed him to be different than his dad, right? And I'm very thankful for that. But not to live vicariously through your kids. I think that's a big challenge for parents, no matter where you fall and how old your kids are.
Right. Which, by the way, when you were asking earlier, what we learned just from working with teens, that's another big one. And I'm glad you mentioned it, is that every teen is different. God has gifted them all in different ways. They're not the same gifts that you have. And some of them, in fact, might be gifts that you kind of rub in a weird way with. And also, again, knowing that those gifts are under construction. So, we've had boys that at first you're like, man, they are kind of arrogant. They're kind of proud, man. They kind of try to do what they want to do, but God has given them the gift of leadership. So our job as a teen leader, and our job with our kids, was to recognize those gifts or, try to recognize their gifts, and how can we help them use them in a godly way and encourage them, and know that they're struggling with them, right? They're trying to find their place and how they use their gifts, and just like we did. And so treat them all as individual people that God has gifted in special ways, and help them use their gifts for the glory of God, for his kingdom, and for hopefully a career, So
I was just going to say real quick, kind of talking to that, our son has always wanted to be a pilot. You know that since he's been 4. There's nothing more he ever wanted to do than be a pilot, and that never changed. I don't think that's the norm for a kid to 100% know what they want to do, and he's pursuing that passion. Well, those people that know me well, I have a little bit of fear of flying. I would never pick that job for my kid. I wouldn't. And so, but this is his life and his passion, and I will not let that be a part of that. So I tell him, don't tell me you're cross country and you're soloing at night until after you do it, because I don't mean to, but inside I kind of think about it, because I do have some issues with flying. And so that has been a journey for me, is just, being okay. God has got him. It's nothing about me. He is God's child. And if that's the career path that the Lord is leading him through, I just need to sit back and pray about it.
And in addition to being okay with it, is that, this is why we have kids, right? They are God's children. And ultimately our job is to prepare them to go off on their own and be, a functioning, serving, loving, Christ-like adult. And so on the one hand, it's, right, if you're like, gosh, I'm not sure what they're doing. But on the other part of that is celebrating and watching them take on this journey and make their story and write their chapter, and so, and again, Don Patterson told me that. He said, Chad, when I was struggling, I was emotional one day, he said, Chad, but think about it this way too. He said, be happy. You've done your job. You can see you've done a great job. Now enjoy watching them go and make a life. And so I've tried to step back and see that. And it's
be the
awesome.
Cheerleaders.
Yeah. And it's awesome to see Brian living his dream and living his passion, and to see Emma
leading Bible
leading Bible studies and being a Christian leader. It's awesome. Those are maybe the unexpected things and blessings out of the transition.
Yeah. That's very cool. We're coming to an end, but I've got 2 questions. The first I want you to just answer real quickly. So you talked about kind of gathering group people around you, having people that are going through it. I mean, you both talked about Mary and Don Patterson, who are maybe a little bit, they're beyond where you're at in terms of stage.
Older than us. Sorry.
If Don and Mary are listening, I didn't say that. That was Cindy. But so you've got kind of these people alongside you that are going with it, parallel with you, but then these people who are kind of beyond it, who are kind of cheering you on and coaching you, and hey, I did this. Can you talk about like how is that a weird conversation to go up to another parent maybe that you've known for a while and like, hey, would you mind just crying with me as we grieve? We're grieving this together. It's okay if you cry. Like, what does that look like?
Well, I'll tell you what it looked like for me. I didn't have to ask anybody. My friends that were ahead of me in the journey could tell by my face. And the week that all the kids are moving to college, I can't tell you how many even friends that moved away called to say, how are you doing? Or texted a tough week. Or at church, there was a couple ladies that
Amy Drake.
And just
Karen
came,
Zimmerman.
and held my hand and say, it's okay. I don't know if men do that, but they recognized
Maybe
it.
don't hold my hand.
And I hope someday.
Put their arm around my shoulder.
But I hope someday that I think to do that to the mamas younger than me when they're going through it, to say, I'm here. I have walked that. And I will sit here and listen to you cry and get your words out so you can move on.
One of the things we did with our small group too is, and I think we've only done it once, but we want to do it more, is we want to bring some of those couples in, like,
just couples that have been through it,
and then just come and say, just share what you learned, share what you went through, give us opportunities to ask questions in a group setting like that. And they love being able to serve other people when they're going through it.
Thanks for helping us think through that. I think that mean, that small group, the people you can live life with, you can be authentic and just really, really raw. You used that word earlier, really raw with, is just so life-giving. That's a gift from God, that we carry each other's burdens, and we stand there with each other and cry with each other and hug each other and sit across the table from each other. That's a critical component to being emotionally and spiritually healthy. And I just want to ask you guys, as we kind of finish up here, how have your prayers changed through this transition, through the last years? For your prayers for yourself, for your kids, for each other. What are you praying for, Emma, as she's now senior year and looking at a career after that? What is it? How does that change for you guys?
Well, just generally, even apart from the transition into empty nesting, over the last few years, as part of a coaching network that I'm a part of, pastoral coaching network, is I started journaling my prayers, and I would highly recommend that for anybody. But with that, so what it's done, and then also just with the transition, it's caused me to be more, I would just say, more intentional about my prayers. So, Lord, please let this financial aid go through for Brian, for Emma, and then also, I am more in the forefront is marriage for them, right? And
praying for their
career,
spouses, future spouses.
Praying for their future spouse and their faith life, and staying close to Jesus now that they're not, they're less under our control, way less under our control, for going to church and being active in their faith life. So I would say personally, it's been a lot more intentional that regard. And I would say, and maybe, I don't know if I've told Cindy this, but our marriage too, I pray.
Let him tolerate me with all the extra time.
I pray for that much more intentionally now, like, specific areas of Cindy and I's life, our faith life, our devotional life, our, everything. And it's journaled. So that's what I would say for me.
I would say probably very similar, and just a lot more Thanksgiving. But I do pray for my children's faith, and that the Lord always brings people in their lives that help cultivate that and grow their faith, and pray for their future spouses if they are going to be married someday. So I would say all that, and a lot for their safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially the pilot.
Well, Chad and Cindy, thanks so much for helping us see the world from where you sit. It's been great to talk with y'all, and know that it's been helpful to our listeners to hear your thoughts and perspectives. You're just still processing that. Some of that's still pretty raw and emotional for you guys, and it's been good to see that, to hear it. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode from where you sit, leave some feedback, comment, or share this video or the podcast on social media, and then join in we've got a closed Facebook group that you can discuss all this stuff and ask questions, get more information. You just have to search discussion group When Fear Reigns on Facebook. Chad and Cindy, any last words?
Just thank you. It's even going through these, this 20 minutes or so is healing, and it's therapeutic, as you're going through it. And we pray that if it helps touch anybody and help them even a little bit, then God be praised.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee that it'll help somebody. It'll start that discussion for somebody. We'll see you next time on When Fear Reigns, a podcast that helps you live your faith in the secular world.